Welcome to the Reviews Without Remorse podcast with Joe and Dave. Be warned, the discussions in this podcast may contain detailed spoilers. For spoiler-free reviews, be sure to check out our show on YouTube. Enter at your own risk and enjoy the show.
The series, Out of Danger? Not quite. I am in my light purple shirt, the dashing rogue, otherwise known as Joe, and the so horny he might literally explode teenager in his black robes is my partner, David.
Really?
And this is episode number 175, and in this episode, we lost two legends this week, and one legend in his own right. Dave and I will discuss Hal Holbrook, Cloris Leachman, and Dustin Diamond. The Coming to America finally got a bigger trailer. We know the premise. We can talk about it. And then it's mutiny on the Enterprise as we embark to save an old friend and even let him steer the ship this go around. Dave and I will discuss 1984's Star Trek III, The Search for Spock. Greetings, my old friend.
My fellow adventurer, greetings to you as well. Oh, this is going to be an interesting one. I kind of have a soft spot for this movie.
Yeah, it will be interesting. I do as well. I'll tell you kind of how I felt revisiting it. So let's get to it.
Morning, Chucky. Morning, Lou.
Bud, I like you. Just remember something. Man looks in the abyss. There's nothing staring back at him. At that moment, man finds his character. And that is what keeps him out of the abyss.
I think I understand. Lou.
Born February 17th, 1925 in Cleveland, Ohio, Hal Holbrook left this world with 135 credits to his name. He was in... I couldn't even go over the list of different movies he was in. One of the earliest ones that I remember when I was growing up had to be John Carpenter's The Fog. That was like the first time I ever saw him, where he was Father Malone in 1980. I was a wee child of 11 years old. Somehow I'd convinced my mom to go see the movie. R-rated movie at 11 years old. Yay me. Damn, I'm good. But my personal things aside, seriously, the man built up a resume like nobody's business. Probably his best known thing was his Broadway one-man show where he took on the part of Mark Twain, and he just did a Mark Twain monologue for like 2.5 hours, and people would talk about how it was like the most amazing thing ever. Another one of his big parts was Lieutenant Briggs in Magnum Force. He was the part of Deep Throat in All the President's Men. So whenever you hear somebody say, follow the money, in that really calm and wonderful tone, that's who it's based on. Another one, this one's like another guilty pleasure of mine, Capricorn 1. Do you remember that one?
Vaguely, very vaguely.
It was the one with like James Brolin, and it was like, that they were faking a mission to Mars, but the capsule burns up, so they have to get rid of the astronauts. It's actually a really fun, interesting movie as far as I'm concerned. He made a brief appearance in The Sopranos. He made a brief appearance in The West Wing. The man, seriously, just go to IMDb. The man, he's getting an Oscar, little tip of the fingers. Absolutely. There's no way this guy doesn't. But wanted to bring him up anyway because, he was always memorable. He had a very unique face. He had an incredible speaking voice. He died January 23rd at the age of 95 in Beverly Hills.
Yeah, he certainly was. I mean, talk about a body of work. One of the things I remember was Magnum Force early on with Clint Eastwood. But I think that when I think of Hal Holbrook, the one that comes to mind a lot very quickly is Wall Street.
Oh, yes. I can't believe I didn't mention that. Go on, please.
Right. He was always the guy who kind of had like little words of wisdom for Charlie Sheen's character, and Charlie Sheen usually kind of blowing the old guy off a little bit. And I remember but he was like the last guy to say something to him right before he goes into the office, before he gets marched out in handcuffs. Just a very, very good, memorable part. And you needed somebody with the gravitas and presence of Hal Holbrook to pull it off.
What knockers?
Oh, thank you, Doctor.
I am Frau Blucher.
Born April 30th, 1926 in Des Moines, Iowa, Cloris Leachman has an incredible body of work in her name. 287 credits to her name. Now, probably her first real big breakout role, aside from a bunch of TV appearances and stuff, would have to be 1971's The Last Picture Show. That has to be like the big one. That was a huge movie for its time. It was directed by Peter Bogdanovich. It had Timothy Bottoms, Jeff Bridges, Sybil Shepherd, Ben Johnson, Ellen Burstyn, Eileen Brennan, and Cloris Leachman. And I'm kind of ashamed of myself as I admit, as famous as that movie is, I've never seen it, and I feel really bad for it. My personal first introduction to this wonderfully talented, hysterical lady had to be 1974's Young Frankenstein as Frau Blucher. I mean, first of all, that movie in itself is brilliant. And it's a movie we should probably review at some point. It was like really like the beginning of Mel Brooks's, tidal wave of just amazing things. She showed up in the movie Crazy Mama. She was Queen. She was the original Queen Hippolyta, Wonder Woman's mom in Wonder Woman.
Oh, right. Yeah.
History of the World Part 1. I'll never forget her sitting there, needle pointing away and then accidentally stabbing her breast and it making a deflating sound. Love that. She played Molly Brown at one point. Seriously, it's like she was in the frickin' Facts of Life, for God's sakes. I think she took over for Mrs. Garrett.
I think you're right. Yeah, she absolutely did. Yeah. I mean, she's so recognizable, but I'm with you. I keep going back to Young Frankenstein and her playing for Hal Booker. Honestly, I mean, one of the things I have to sort of say is I sort of forgot, like when I went back to her IMDb and kind of tried to brush up on some things that I might be forgetting. I some of the old pictures, I really forgot she was a stunning woman in the day. She really was beautiful. Yes, so it's kind of it's sort of to her credit that as she got older, instead of trying to do younger and younger parts, as a lot of actresses do today, she ran with it and kind of went for the ugly parts. She wasn't afraid to. I mean, she was a real actress. She was not afraid to do parts that were not flattering. So, I mean, she really gets a lot of credit from me.
Oh, me too. Actually, one of the ones I remember. Do you remember Beavis and Butthead Do America?
Yeah, of course.
She was the voice of the old lady that Butthead befriends on the bus that they take. The one
that's so funny.
Yep, she was that. She was, and for some of the younger members of the audience, she was Dr. Doofenshmirtz's mom in Phineas and Ferb. But if you ever want to see some really fun acting on her part, do you remember a TV show called Malcolm in the Middle?
Of course.
Okay, she was the grandma, and she was absolutely hysterical. She was every time she came on the screen, I just laughed. She'd just walk around with a really exaggerated Czechoslovakian accent and smoking cigarettes and abusing the hell out of kids. Oh God.
Yeah.
What a wonderful woman. She died, unfortunately, January 27th. My birthday! She died on my birthday, 2021. Lady, you were gorgeous and you were funny. Here's to your next life.
Oh, Screech, would you put this crown back in the trophy case for me?
Bad idea, sir. Last year, those Valley pranksters stole it.
Well, what do you suggest?
Let me hide it, sir. I'll find a secret place where no one will find it.
Really? Where?
If I tell you, it won't be a secret. Duh.
When I did the intro, I almost said that we lost 2 legends and 1 oddity. And right before I said it, I said, that doesn't sound very, very nice, so I won't do that. But honestly, that's kind of what this guy was. I was just a little too old. Like my younger sister was addicted to Beverly Hills 90210. My younger brother, just a little younger than her, he was the one who was watching Saved by the Bell. That was his time, and that was sort of his. He was it was his age range, etc. So yeah, there was this guy Screech who was every show needs, especially back then, a token nerd, the comedy relief, etc. And he was, he was funny. But yeah, ever since then, I honestly, I kind of feel like you can't not look at his career and call it troubled, for lack of a better word. The poor guy died age 44. Wow, that is way too young. But I have to wonder, and I don't like tapping on anybody's grave, but he did have a rough life. So I know he died of cancer, but I have to wonder if his lifestyle contributed. He actually, after doing Saved by the Bell, he was infamous for being in a sex tape, which he weirdly backtracked years later, saying that it wasn't really him. I don't know how you do that. The tape was literally called Screeched Saved by the Smell. So yeah, so things weren't.
I forgot about that, or I blocked it out.
Yeah, it was one of those sad moments where like a former celebrity does a sex tape. He also did a tell-all book called Behind the Bell, where he basically ripped a lot of his coworkers to shreds. Kind of it was a tell-all. It was a gossipy book about the goings-on of the show. Didn't paint a very flattering picture of his co-stars. Then at one point he got into professional wrestling, and I tell you, I remember. I don't know what this was, what show this was on, but it was maybe it was like a Howard Stern thing or something like that, where celebrities were boxing each other, and I remember they paired Dustin Diamond against Ron Paulo, who played Horshack, which you would right. You would think this was sort of like the dream matchup, because they were very similar parts, and frankly almost like kind of similar looking even. But honestly, it was just really uncomfortable to watch, because Ron Paulo was much older. Like this, Dustin is probably in his prime at this point. He's in his late 20s, maybe even early 30s at this point. Ron Paulo is much older and hardly in shape. And I remember this Dustin Diamond taking this match really seriously. And again, it was just uncomfortable to watch him sort of pummeling this other guy for something that was supposed to be fun. So yeah, just kind of a weird dude. And like I said, I sort of hate ripping on a guy after he's gone, but he was a really weird guy, and let's just say I hope he's found peace.
Hey, what you doing back here? Say it again, feel right in his...
I've just discovered that I may have a son here in this land.
How much child support she getting from?
The king pays no child support.
No child support for 30 years and you came back? You was a dummy.
Hello, I am Hakim Jaffer, king of Zamunda. You are the heir to the throne.
Yes, my son.
In 2005, Craig Brewer directed Hustle and Flow. Good movie. Terrence Howard got an Oscar nomination for that movie. In 2006, he did Black Snake Moan. Weird movie. Very weird movie. Followed that up with a remake of Footloose. Followed that up with 2019's surprise enjoyable Dolomite Is My Name. Which would explain how he got the job for directing Coming Number 2 America. And I just want to pause for a second and just say, it really annoys me when they replace words with numbers. We're not texting.
Like Fan Four Stick?
Yeah, like Fan Four Stick, whatever the hell that meant.
Yeah.
Watching this second trailer for Coming to America, they finally let the story be known. And my first thing, and as weird as it's going to sound, my first thing is, huh? He has a kid? He got busy with some other woman in America before I thought like he was literally in town like a day or two before he just, wham, zoomed right on her, on the girl. I thought that was like kind of the thing. Did I miss something from the first movie? I'm glad we're going back to be able to, rewatch them when we wind up, reviewing these movies. But it kind of threw me off right away. And it literally became a thing that when I saw that, it like took me out because I said, but that there wasn't even, they saw them going out and everything like that before he settled on the girl. Like they had that big thing where they saw these women like, I was Joan of Arc in a previous life, and she's holding a lighter under her hand and stuff like that. And it's like, he get busy with one of the crazy ones. I mean, they kind of made a whole point of wow, that wasn't a successful night if I remember the movie correctly. So right off the bat, this movie's got me with my arms crossed and a dubious look. Yeah. It's like a little retroactive continuity error.
Yeah, I'm with you 1,000%. That is what jumped out at me as well, and it's frustrating because the rest of the trailer, I watched it. Well, yeah, I mean, potentially funny. Yeah, I was kind of thrilled that they were bringing back so much of the original cast. They seem to bring back almost all of the characters they touched on in the first one, which I mean, obviously. Eddie Murphy and Arsenio Hall performed so many of the parts. Once you get those two, you got 80% of the cast, frankly. But honestly, you had both fathers there. I was so glad the wife was the same woman and still looked very good, by the way.
Agreed.
So honestly, I was the rest of it was looking really good. Although honestly, I am a tiny bit nervous. There were a couple parts where I thought they're working way too hard to bring back. Put it this way: Akeem goes back to America to find the son. He puts on the Mets jersey again, as if he needs to sort of disguise himself again for some reason. Mm-hmm. So I didn't quite get what that was about. So I'm saying to myself that they might be pushing a little too hard to redo some of the scenes they did, etc. But yes, that was the thing that got me too. It didn't, that whole point of him having a kid, like you said, he was there. I mean, you literally 2 days, 3 days at the most. And yeah, I mean, the whole point was he had this purity about him. The father's saying, go sow your wild oats. And he's like, Dad, that's not what I'm doing. That's not what I want. I want to find my true love. Right. Right. All of a sudden now they're going to retroactively say, oh, well, he played around a little bit before he was only there a couple hours, for crying out. I mean, yeah, that really does throw a little damper on his character. I really wish I get it. We need a reason that he would go back to Queens, but is this the way to go? I don't think so. I could literally see them in the writing room scrambling for something, and maybe this was the only thing they could think of, but still I don't really think that works.
Yeah, I'm not feeling this at all. Rumor has it that the whole idea for even doing a sequel came from a pitch by of all people Ryan Coogler. He pitched something and Eddie Murphy's like, I don't like it, but you know what, maybe we should do a sequel to Coming to America.
I mean, why the hell not? I mean, Eddie Murphy is not doing a whole lot these days. I mean, the guy will never have to worry about money. I mean, he will always get, little gigs here and there, voiceovers, etc. But yeah, the glory days of it's probably why I'm also hearing rumors about another Beverly Hills Cop movie. But I mean, Eddie Murphy's another guy. He still looks fine. Like, he doesn't look over the hill. He still looks the same, more or less. So why not? I'm kind of fine with the idea of them doing this. This is another one of those sequels. Like, it's kind of way overdue. So we're kind of pulling back some old characters. But yeah, I would have been completely fine with it. But yeah, this idea is real rough. I don't know. I mean, honestly, I kind of feel like this is almost like Luke Skywalker in The Last Jedi levels of, I don't see this character doing that.
Well, before we go on to our next thing, it should be noted that somewhere out there actually is already a Beverly Hills Cop sequel. Did you hear about this?
No.
Yes, it seems that back in 2013, it was filmed as a television movie, directed by Barry Sonnenfeld, of all people. It was just called Beverly Hills Cop, and it was the story of Axel Foley's son, Aaron Foley.
Really?
Yeah, and Eddie Murphy does pop in it at some point, it seems.
You're kidding. I
wish to God I
know
wasn't.
that.
No, I was looking at Eddie Murphy's IMDb, and I was like, what is this 2013 TV movie, Beverly Hills Cops? Like, no, yeah, it was real. It happened. It has never seen the light of day.
It's never. That's crazy. I literally never knew that. What the heck? And I don't know if this means anything, but on IMDb, it's got a 7.3.
All right, you know what? I'm going to find it.
Yeah, I mean, I think we have to, just to sort of. I'm fascinated now. So yeah, I say we got to find this guy.
I like Sonnenfeld as a director. I think he's got a very unique visual style. So yeah, I'm very curious. Weird way to end Coming to America, but hey, I just saw it. I had to say something.
Well, there you go. Okay, good. Like I suppose that at least Eddie Murphy is stepping up from that. So way to go.
All that they've loved, all that they've fought for, all that they've stood for, will now be put to the test. Star Trek III: The Search for Spock.
The word, sir? The word is no. I am therefore going anyway.
You do this, you'll never sit in the captain's chair again.
Engage auto systems. Clear all moorings.
Cleared, sir.
1/4 impulse power.
Someone is stealing the Enterprise.
Admiral Kirk and his bridge crew risk their careers stealing the decommissioned USS Enterprise to return to the restricted Genesis planet to recover Spock's body. Written by Harve Bennett, based on Star Trek, created by Gene Roddenberry, directed by Leonard Nimoy, Star Trek III: The Search for Spock. So, in the 90s, let me run with this for a second. In the 90s, I went to Universal Studios in Hollywood with my girlfriend at the time, and my aunt and my uncle and everything like that. And at Universal Studios, they used to do these little things where they would, call people up on stage and you'd act out scenes and stuff like that. And for a while there, they were doing this thing where you would actually act out scenes from Star Trek and, semi sort of interact with, the different actors and stuff like that. And, they edit it together as a little mini movie and stuff like that. I bring this up because I feel I should point out my bias. I got picked to play the part of the Klingon captain. And I was brought up on stage, and the set that they built was a replica of the set of the bridge of the Klingon bird of prey. So I have an extreme soft spot for this movie simply because I ran up on stage with a Klingon phaser in my hand and screamed my head off, and the audience loved me.
I do remember seeing that, by the way.
Okay, yeah, I'm glad you do. The videotape is around here somewhere. Someday I will find it, and it will never see the light of day. But I still remember my lines. No chine brimbo cha he 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 he. It's a long story, but anyway, that part aside, it's part of the reason that this movie remains like a little soft spot in my heart because of that. Another reason it remains a soft spot in my heart is because, unlike a lot of the other people that I found the cerebral side of this movie to be enjoyable. Personally, I found it to be more introspective than Wrath of Khan was, and maybe that's the reason why people didn't like it. Wrath of Khan was very, action packed and very in your face with its subject matter and stuff like that. And I thought this movie had a nice subtlety that was more reminiscent of the original Star Trek. I don't love the movie; it's not like my favorite of the Star Trek movies, but it's maligned a little more than I think it deserves.
Okay. Well, let me say this. Honestly, a lot was going through my head as I was rewatching this film, and it's honestly been ages since I watched it from beginning to end. I think it's been ages since I watched it at all. Wrath of Khan is the one you sort of catch on TV once in a while. This one, not so much. It's an interesting follow-up, but I do have to say, and I actually watched it twice. I kind of sat and focused once, and then I just kind of was playing it again in the background as I was doing things, because I was struggling to kind of get my head around it. But yeah, I have to confess, this one left me pretty flat. And I remember it being just sort of an okay follow-up to the one before. In fact, I remember I was in high school when this came out. And luckily back then, it's interesting. The film tries to sort of pick up what feels like just moments after the end of Khan, right?
Right.
Yet when you watch it, after seeing them both multiple times, having Khan pretty much committed to memory from watching it so much, this one looks very different when it opens. The bridge looks different. It's lit different, and if it wasn't just for some black smudge on the walls, you have no idea that this is supposed to be right after the last one. But yeah, that said, I remember just kind of walking away this time feeling as if the script was very, very mediocre. It felt like, well, this is what has to happen next. We have to go back to Genesis to pick up Spock. Was kind of a given. And I sort of feel like every step of the way, to me, feels very first draft. We get home. Well, we have to have some conflict, so we have to get the Enterprise, whatever. The thing with Bones, I mean, that was sort of just the natural progression after the first one. We have to sort of play up that angle a little bit. Bones is kind of losing his marbles a little bit because of what happened. We go to Genesis and we need conflict, so there's Klingons. There's a lot of really good things about the film. One of the things that was impressed upon me this time around, I noticed it before, but I noticed it even more now. The attempt to make the Klingons really sinister. They really went the extra mile to write the Klingons as just different thinking people. Like these are bad dudes. You don't want to cross these guys. They're not just your just typical foils for the heroes. And of course, Christopher Lloyd does a very good job in his role. But again, I felt in most cases, most of the dialogue felt, like I said, kind of first draft. It's one of those things where you put your characters in a room and you just have them tell us the things we need to know. The scene where it's after they've gotten back home, they are hanging out at Kirk's apartment in their kind of casual clothes. They do a cheers for lost comrades. And then it's, sir, what's going to happen with this? Well, this is going to happen. Well, what's going to happen with that? Well, this is what's going to happen. Like, again, just stuff we need to know, not real good dialogue. And then when Sarek walks in, and I remember, and I was watching this, and I remember specifically watching this part twice and thinking, I know when you're writing a script, you got to have conflict. But I'm watching that scene play out, and I'm saying to myself, it just doesn't feel natural. It feels like two men who were kind of bickering and misunderstanding, because misunderstanding is clever writing. But we both know that this is not how this conversation would go. These both men are smarter than this. I kind of felt like it wouldn't have taken very much to tweak it a little bit, where Sarek walks in and the first thing he says is, I need your thoughts. No bickering beforehand. None of this. You left Spock there. His future and stuff. And Kirk is like, "What are you talking about?" And I felt like as I'm watching this, it's as if people don't know Vulcans. Like we've been cohabitating, living side by side, and working with the Vulcans for many years at this point. So why pretend that this is the first time a Vulcan has ever died? And we don't know what happens when a Vulcan dies. So that's kind of my initial frame of mind with this one. I like a lot of it for what it is, but it feels overly simple. You know, there are moments when I agree with what you're saying, like when they actually do the mind meld, you know, with Kirk and Sarek, and they kind of zero in on eyes and mouths. I thought that was well done. You know, I like how that played out. And there were probably a couple other aspects that were similar. But honestly, for the most part, it seemed oddly small and weirdly simple. And after what I think is a far more complex story in Khan, this one feels odd. And it's weird because I feel like when I was trying to remember how I felt about it years ago, I think I remember feeling that the film almost got it better than Khan, because Khan was so focused on, you know, the conflict. This one, it let you sort of breathe a little more and just sort of see how these characters act, which I thought was good. But yeah, now that I'm watching it again many years later, it didn't hold up as well.
Bring Alberta Bracer. She's arming torpedoes. Shields up.
The shield's non-responsive. Fuck!
We're a sitting duck.
You know, I can't really argue with any of the things that you just said. At first, I was going to be like, "Oh, well, what do you mean?" But you're right. There is a lot of Basil exposition in this movie, and for those who don't understand what I mean by that, that is from the Austin Powers movies, which someday we're going to review. The character's name was Basil Exposition. His one thing was just to give exposition of the various things. That scene with Sarek always struck me wrong. You know, if he had just walked in and, like you just said, and you know, just said, "Kirk, I must speak with you. Leave us. I must meld with you." You know, just nothing along those lines. And you know, then explained about how, you know, and the Vulcan death ritual and so on and so forth, et cetera, whatever. That would have worked a lot better. Harve Bennett is not a huge Star Trek guy, and the only reason he even got to write this movie is because of the success of Wrath of Khan. But I would argue that the majority of the success of Wrath of Khan came mostly from Nicholas Meyer, the director, than Harve Bennett. So it's not... As plots go, it is a mundane plot. I will be the first to admit it. It's just my thing is what I was trying to explain in the beginning is that it is not quite the abomination that a lot of people make it out to be. It is not a great movie. I mean, excuse me, it's not a movie that I love, but I don't hate it. And the funny part is the rating that we're going to wind up giving because of our own parameters of, well, should you watch it 5 and above, you really can't get to the next Star Trek movie without this movie. It's like if you go Star Trek 2 to Star Trek 4 as much as you'd like to, it'd be like, there's a lot missing.
Yeah.
I mean, major events happen in this movie. Probably the biggest major event. And honestly, it's something that I took a point off from the movie for. When I went to the movie theater before the movie even came out and saw the trailer for this movie, what does it show? It shows the frickin' saucer section of the Enterprise on fire and spinning out of control. Thanks for the spoiler trailer.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, that was I think that's kind of I'll be honest with you. I see, and it is frustrating because there is something that they're doing in this film which I think is working, which is, I think by the time Kirk and Spock are the only two left on the planet, that really is a genuine bleakest moment. I don't think things have never looked worse.
Mm-hmm.
Like that was a real moment where it's like, I think these two are going to die on this planet. I mean, I kind of feel like they get out of it reasonably easily, frankly, but I will say, I honestly, leading up to that, they literally have to steal the ship. They have a run-in with the Klingons, and I for the most part, I like how the conflict, I mean, the actual dogfight, it's only 2 shots and it's over. But I kind of liked it because I said to myself, I think what I'm supposed to be reading here is that because it's literally like just 5 guys trying to steer this gigantic ship that would normally have a crew of 100 plus. I think that's why just 1 shot and they're kind of dead and there's nothing they can do. So I was like, all right, okay, I'm kind of with this. On the other hand, the frustrating part about that scene is, I mean, there's no action, but that's a minor point. What I find really frustrating is the talking. I feel like once the ship is pretty much crippled, there's a shit ton of talking. And I'm saying to myself, the scene, like, you have Kirk on the bridge talking to the Klingon who's talking to the people on the planet, right? David is murdered. And the way he's killed, I think the way they shot it, they tried to make it look like you couldn't see what happened. Like it was just a melee. These 2 guys are just rolling around, and before you know it, something happens. It's not supposed to be real clear. And then they just sort of say David is dead, and Kirk collapses, and I'm kind of like, I don't know, I don't know if this is working for me. It's just them telling each other things, and again, David is all by himself. It's a random Klingon who kills him. I wish it was the lead Klingon, because again, you would have had a little more, I suppose, a little more tension, a little more something, but. Yeah, it just kind of was running out of gas at that point. And then, I mean, when they blow the ship up, again, I like the idea that they're building the increasingly bad stakes. Like things are getting worse and worse and worse until there's just a couple of them down on the planet. So I on one hand, I'm kind of going with it, but on the other hand, I'm like, it's just so clunky. It's not really written well. I don't like that people just sort of feeding each other lines from. I mean, this is not Kirk talking to Khan, and them kind of goading each other from the last one. It's just talking. It's just people talking about what's happening, and it's like a radio play at this point.
It plays like a director who has just transitioned from stage to film. And almost doesn't understand the medium. As a stage play, I never thought I'd say this, but maybe this would have worked better as a stage play.
well, there you go.
I don't know how they do the special effects and the beaming and stuff like that, but hey, I'm throwing something out there because what the hey. It is true that, the thing is that Nimoy wanted to make it an actor's movie, and he minimized the action because of it. And there were some great visuals. I mean, as crazy as nonsensical as it was, the effect of the Enterprise breaking up and falling into the planet's atmosphere, that was very nicely done. But it is really the acting moments that where he shines. The guard yelling, saying, "Sula, where do you think you're going, Tiny?" And Sula's like, "Tiny," and then beats the crap out of him the next scene later. And says, "Don't call me Tiny." Come on, that's a great little scene.
It was.
The little pensive moment that happens with McCoy and when he's talking to Spock in sickbay. I thought that was a lovely moment. I thought that was a great little moment for DeForest Kelley. And to be perfectly honest with you, I defy you right here, right now, to come up with a better scene from the movies, acting from Kirk from the movies, than when he's informed that it was David that got killed and the way he collapsed into his chair and just looked full of despair. That's got to be the best acting moment from Shatner as Kirk in the films. Got to give it that, please.
Kind of, yeah.
What is this? Star Trek 3 asterisk? Everything is an asterisk with you.
I put it this way. I felt as if I think he did just fine. I'll tell you what. Yes. Let me, the way you're asking it is, did Shatner do a good job? Yes, he absolutely did. But I also feel that the script and the direction is sort of letting him dangle in the breeze a little bit. He does great with it. It's an awkward moment. There's why not a little music here? Music I think would have helped out. And even the lighting at this point, again, it kind of goes back to what we were saying about how it feels like a stage play. Like they just sort of show him falling over in the chair and the lighting is awkward. You're not even really seeing his face for the most part. It's not a well-directed scene. He does fine. I'll give you that. But they're not helping him very much at all.
It is a darker shot movie in almost all respects. And I'm going to disagree with you. I still get a little choked up whenever he says, "Klingon bastards, you murdered my son." It gets me every single time. Maybe it's because I have a son now. I don't know. Maybe I've gotten soft in my old age, but the scene still affected me. But I got to bring up the semi-elephant in the room. Robin Curtis.
Yeah. Yep.
What was she doing?
Well, what do you mean?
Listen, Savick was a hard act to follow for sure. I mean, from what I understand, Kirstie Alley just didn't want to be typecast, and fine, whatever. But she was like, she was like Vulcan times 20. I didn't feel like anything, like nothing. It just goes to show you just how amazing an actor both Mark Leonard and Leonard Nimoy are, because they play emotionless characters that are not emotionless beings. There's nuance and subtlety in the way they convey themselves, and I always appreciate that. But it's like Robin Curtis didn't get and I feel bad like singling her out, but every time she was on the screen, she just rubbed me the wrong way. I didn't feel like this was Savick at all. The Savick that we got from the first movie, gung ho, maybe a little bit too by the book and everything like that. And here's this new Savick, and she just kind of, I don't know, existed. I mean, what did she add other than a brief moment of tension of, oh my God, will they kill David or will they kill Savick? And
well, yeah,
and I feel like,
I mean,
go ahead.
Right, and it's a frustrating moment because you're simply saying to yourself, okay, well, which character is more expendable? Oh, well, of course we got to kill off David. I mean, we're not going to have Kirk and his son running around for so yeah, of course they got rid of him.
But for what? I feel bad for Merritt Patrick because I thought he must have thought, hey, I'm Kirk's son, this could be a nice lucrative career. No, you're done. Goodbye. Bye.
Yeah. Right. And he's done in off screen kind of, just again, an oddly lackluster moment. But yeah, you're right. I mean, honestly, it doesn't really, I sort of felt like just bumping him off. It was, I didn't know if it was like a satisfying dramatic moment or a very unsatisfying moment where I'm not really sure what the point was. I kind of felt like, well, I guess they're trying to tell me that, again, these Klingons are up to no good, and maybe you needed something dramatic to make Kirk take the actual final step of blowing up the Enterprise. Like maybe that drives things home. Like, all right, this is real serious business now. There's a reason why he's blowing it up. But honestly, yeah, it just sort of feels like, well, he's it's like the first girl in a James Bond movie. We have to have a sacrificial lamb. You're not. The script doesn't really need you anymore, so we have to get rid of you. So yeah, I don't know. And again, it's not that it should be a satisfying moment when somebody gets bumped off, but I kind of feel like there does sort of usually feel like a logic to why this is happening, and I wasn't getting it from that.
No, I agree with you there, man. That whole sequence could have been handled so much better. It could have had a real emotional. It would have bookended Shatner's reaction a lot better, because I mean, first problem right out of the gate is the fact that you're dealing with days since the end of the last movie, so Kirk's known him for a couple of days at most. He's known he existed because he did mention in Star Trek Wrath of Khan, I did what you asked, I stayed away. So he knew the kid existed, but he knew nothing about the kid. So it almost makes it an extreme emotional overreaction. Now, I understand why they had to do it the way that they did it, because they were relying on the Genesis planet to revive Spock, and that was only just like a safety net. That was just in case, if Leonard Nimoy changed his mind and decided to come back. That's what the Genesis planet was for. And weirdly, that brings me up to the next issue in this movie, that extremely wonderfully done emotional scene of Spock's funeral and everything like that is erased.
Well, sort of, but well,
is everything I'm going to say tonight an asterisk with you?
I hear what you're saying. I don't know if I would. I wouldn't be so hard on it though. I kind of feel like I get what you're saying, but I kind of feel like in this case you have to sort of let them go a little bit, because I mean I mean, put it this way, it's not Rise of Skywalker ish where they literally undo everything that happened in Jedi. I don't know. I kind of feel like Khan finished the way it was supposed to finish, and then this was the next chapter. But I mean, your point is taken on an emotional level. It does feel like, is this just a Deus Ex Machina all along? We kind of knew it was going to be, but yeah, it's a reasonable point.
My thing is to give it a little bit of context. There, even in when did that come out? In 84. Even in 84, the rewatchability of things hadn't quite, like the VHS market, the video market had just like started booming at this point. So the idea of things being rewatchable and everything like that wasn't really a big thing. So I guess I should kind of get a little bit of credit for that. I suppose. But it was one of the first things I remember walking out of the theater that, like, I cried like a baby during Star Trek 2 when Spock died. Everybody did. And then I kind of feel like, well, I got tricked. I should have known. I should have known that there's no way you kill off Spock. And in subsequent viewings, it has lessened it. Whenever I view Star Trek 2 again, I get a little awe, when he dies and everything like that, but not the gut punch. Like, let me give you an example. Okay, let me give you an example of something. I recently rewatched Avengers Endgame. Okay, and every single time I see Cap with Mjolnir, I cry. Every single time he says Avengers Assemble, I'm like, still have that emotional impact. And I know I'm not the only one with that. And I'm telling you, it would not surprise me if 10 years from now I wouldn't feel the same way, because it was just one of those moments. Star Trek had that moment, and this kind of took that moment and made it not mean as much. And it's that this is just me. This is just my own personal observation. They made it not mean that much. They made the killing of David not mean as much, and then they made the death of Spock not mean as much.
Listen, this is one of those where I can't argue with what you're saying. That is a very fair point. I will say that I sort of feel that I'm saying to myself, put it this way, Star Trek 2 purposely, it's an open ending for sure. I mean, they absolutely positively imply. I mean, Kirk says, I will have to come to this place again if this is truly life from lifelessness, etc. So I don't think I don't find it to be sort of a cheap move in any way, shape, or form. And I'm almost saying to myself, are you criticizing this one for bringing back Spock, or is your criticism really that Star Trek 2 is just too damn good, that they made Spock's death and his funeral so powerful? I mean, the only option is, do you make it less powerful, knowing that there's a possibility he'll come back? So I don't know what the right answer is, but I certainly can't argue with your point.
It is called Fanfare. Fanfare. Twangitu Tsarafel.
Here's the $1 million question, though, about Star Trek 3: The Search for Spock. Do you think Saavik and Spock did something?
Wow, bow, bow. Goodness gracious, I don't know. I don't want to know, because if you look at like Wikipedia, for example, they say the ages of Spock at various moments are 9, 13, 17, and 25. So you're saying somewhere between 13 and 17? Yeesh.
Well, I'll just say this. I remember back in the 80s when this first came out, having conversations, debates with some couple diehard Trekkies that I was friends with in school. They pretty much insisted that yes, that is what happened. And quite frankly, as I was rewatching it, I would certainly say there's an implication, because what's interesting, basically, there's a moment where Spock's freaking out, and she says, "Do you trust me?" And they kind of just do a little finger touching, pretty innocent, and he kind of takes her hand or whatever. And it's kind of like just sort of an implied moment, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, you segue to the next scene. The two of them are, not only are they sleeping, okay, they're laying next to each other sleeping because the Klingons sneak up on them, but there's some smoke billowing past, which I say to myself, most things in movies are not accidents. And I said, is that like a subtle implication of it, like as if you're smoking, having the post coitus cigarette?
Well, I think I might be reading a little too much, but yeah, dude. All kidding aside, they totally did it.
There you go.
They totally did it. They did a magic hand wave over it so that you wouldn't notice, but they totally did.
It's well done because it's absolutely one of those things where I think only if you're looking do you notice it. Like if you're a Trek guy, you sort of get the inference and you'll walk away with, yeah, that just happened. But if you're not, if you're a casual viewer, I don't think at all you would catch that, frankly.
Don't get smart, Tiny.
Admiral, Starfleet Commander.
Sick. Here, take a look. Side elevator. Agents on their way up.
Don't call me Tiny.
But what kind of score do you think it's going to catch?
Nice segue. Who's gonna go first?
I'm letting you go first. I went first last week.
Oh boy! All right, you let me step in it, huh? Okay.
I'm letting you step in it. I think I know where you're landing on this one, so that's going to be interesting. So go on.
Well, I'll say this: it's certainly not a bad movie, but yeah, it is a movie that makes me ask myself, would I recommend this film just on its own? You said earlier, you kind of have to watch it because it is part of the story. You can't get to the next one. And quite frankly, I think if you're, you can't watch the sixth one either without knowing this story. Mm-hmm. So you kind of have to watch it, but I'm certainly not going to base my score on that. My score is going to be on how good I think the film turned out. With that said, I'm giving it a 4.
Gosh darn it.
A little more harsh than you thought?
A little more harsh than I thought. Please explain yourself.
Honestly, I really do have to say this is, put it this way, it's not a film that I ever seek out and want to watch again. I find it to be really awkward in a lot of places. The story isn't compelling. I mean, I can't tell you anything about the score. There's so many moments in this film where I'm like, where's the music? Why? How come there's no music at this part? But yeah, it feels small. I just feel it really does kind of have that first draft feel to it, where it's like, boy, if you guys just if you just played with this a little bit. I see. I mean, again, it's a story that needed to be told. You know, like we have to go back, get Spock, have conflicts, etc. But honestly, I feel like there's no curveballs in this. It's pretty cut and dry. It just is what it is. It's them getting to where they need to be, doing what they need to do, proceeding to where they need to end up, etc. So yeah, not a lot of twists and turns and anything. So just a couple more rewrites really probably would have done this film wonders, because it wouldn't have needed a whole lot of finesse, but it doesn't get any. It's very cut and dry, very mediocre. And yeah, as far as rewatchability, it doesn't grab me. So 4 is kind of harsh, but I really feel like there was a lot of opportunities with this film that they didn't take.
I think it's a little harsh. I think you're being much harder on this film, but I understand, Miss Nimoy's coming out of the gate the first time, and it's not perfect by any stretch of the imagination. I personally gave it a 5. I don't dislike it. I feel that, it is very much a repositioning cruise. Do you know what a repositioning cruise is?
I don't think so.
Okay. Basically, on cruise ships, you have your ports that the cruise ship goes out of. Now, say your cruise ship goes out of a port in like New York. Well, most of the times they'll leave from New York, they'll do their cruise, come back to New York, do another cruise, blah, 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 blah. The problem is that as it gets colder, when the weather gets colder, it's not safe for the ships to be going into a colder harbor. So after its last cruise back and forth in and out of New York, it does what's known as a repositioning cruise. It will, load up a couple of passengers and just take the ship down to its port where it's going to be for the winter time, usually down in Florida or something like that. This movie, and to even a lesser extent, Voyage Home, is a repositioning cruise. They did a major shakeup with the series in Star Trek II. Then they added another shakeup, and they're just kind of moving the pieces into what would be the next phase. And I don't feel like this should have been like a trilogy, which is what they were going for. We had Star Trek 2, Star Trek 3, Star Trek 4. Some would say that is like, the best of the Star Trek trilogy. Except Search for Spock, which should have been like Empire Strikes Back, is not Empire Strikes Back. It is not the strongest one. All it is moving the pieces. It's just moving the cruise ship from New York down to Florida because that's where the next phase is going to happen. And there's nothing we can do about it. It is meandering. It's pedantic, but it's not horrible. And it has moments in it that, to me at least, as an old school Star Trek fan, make it worth it.
I think you summed it up perfectly. I think you're absolutely correct. This certainly does feel like we're now getting our sea legs a little bit, moving out to different things, and yeah, I think it is a fine movie, but I think it's just a fine movie. But I think you summed it up perfectly, frankly.
Thank you very much. Hey, Joe, who asked you? Never mind, I'll handle it. Let me start off. So the bar scene always kind of bothered me a little bit. The guy, need many papers and stuff like that. It was so over the top. It always bothered me, but it wasn't quite as bad as it wasn't. That wasn't too terrible. The scene where the Excelsior gets disabled by Scotty and stuff like that, and he basically pulls out a bunch of spark plugs. That annoyed me because, like, you're telling me that like the equivalent of space spark plugs is what took out a major new starship? Really?
Yeah.
I just. But I think the thing that probably bothered me the most, it just felt right from the beginning. It was what you said right in the beginning. And that's stuck with me when I first saw it. It stuck with me when I was watching it again. And the fact that you mentioned just said to me, that's it. That's my Who Asked You. What the hell kind of way was that to treat Sarek, meeting Kirk like that, being cryptic, being aggressive and adversarial? It was so off character for the character of Sarek, that it was disjointing for me. So if I could change anything, I would. And in fact, even during the show, I basically gave away my Who Asked You by saying how I would have done it differently. There it is.
Yeah, and honestly, I'm going to kind of piggyback on that. You might even use the word steal, but I'll take it one step better. I think that was such a fundamental flaw in the script, was this idea that no one in the universe has any concept of Vulcan life. I mean, there's even a sort of a throwaway scene where Kirk is in talking to one of the higher ups, and they're having a drink, and he's trying to talk him into letting him take the Enterprise to the Genesis planet. And he says something off the cuff about, I don't understand this Vulcan I forget how he says it, like this Vulcan legend stuff either, but, and he goes on. And I'm like, no, you got to do better than that. You can't tell me
that
that
the founders of the damn Federation. You don't just act like you don't know what the hell they are.
Exactly right. Now we're suddenly acting like we have no clue what Vulcans do when they die. Like, what are you talking? Like, what the heck is going on? I mean, again, it is partially because of that goofy, weird conversation with Sarek, which honestly, again, mildly frustrating how that scene plays out, because it could have so easily been tweaked to where it worked. But yeah, it's so yeah, I'm gonna give it to that. That to me, weird segue back to Coming to America. I felt like everything about the movie looked pretty good except the premise. I feel like that's kind of what I feel here. Like, this is a foundational problem with this movie that they could have easily written their way out of it, because it's not so much about just like Vulcan weirdness. It's the Genesis thing. I mean, the whole Genesis thing that's the variable that has changed everything. So why we keep kind of playing around with this kind of like Vulcan weird thing? I like, guys, I know what's happening. Why are you making it confusing when it's not?
I am not going to argue with you, and I love how you somehow manage to pull a random movie trailer that we got and bring it to the end of this. That is just,
there you go.
I mean, come on. I'm just, big cheers for you, sir.
Plot twist.
Wow, that was nicely done. All right, I will grant you that one, sir. How about for your consideration?
There's a few things that kind of jumped out at me, but I think the thing I will, ironically, the actual mind meld with Sarek, I thought that was done really well. And I kind of felt like there was a lot, like you said earlier, Nimoy in his direction. I think he's, what's interesting about the film is that I think you're seeing Leonard Nimoy as first-time director, and also Leonard Nimoy as a disgruntled Star Trek actor who sort of not disgruntled necessarily, but understands the struggles of the other actors who felt that they weren't getting enough screen time. And I remember even as the film opens, I kind of felt like, I remember like Kirk walking around the bridge. He gives Sulu an order. Sulu turns and gets his close-up. Then we move over to Chekhov, and there's this weird moment where he tells Chekhov to go over, and Chekhov looks like Kirk just handed him a turd sandwich.
Mm-hmm.
He makes this face, and it's like, okay. And he goes and begrudgingly goes over there, and it's like, dude, what was that? And then again, we get a close above Uhura, and we were thinking like it just felt a little awkward. Like I get what you're trying to do. You're introducing us to these characters again. But yeah, not so on the nose. Where was I going with my best part? Oh, right.
Yeah.
where Nimoy shines, I think, was in these sort of interpersonal moments. And again, that scene when they're doing the mind meld and he starts to recite the lines from the last one, which frankly would have been far better than that stupid, clumsy, the way the film opens with the shot of the ending of the last song. I get you have to remind people, but that was really awkward. I didn't like that. Especially how it was like in this tiny little box that slowly gets bigger. It was just kind of weird. But the mind meld part I thought is kind of really where he shines. He really got that right. And that's kind of where his strength is, I think.
Well, bravo, sir. I'm going to grant you that one. That was probably the best mind meld in any of the Star Treks, even the original series. For me, I showed my hand earlier. I'm giving it to Shatner's, reaction to David's death. Yeah, we didn't know him all that much. Yeah. But it felt genuine to me. I felt like if somebody told me something similar, that's nearly how I would react. And I hope I don't blow things up afterwards, but I'm giving it to Shatner on that one. I really was moved by it the first time I saw it, and I still am. So there we go. That's me.
Nicely done.
Join us on this, the final voyage of the Starship Enterprise. Star Trek III, The Search for Spock. The adventure continues.
And thus ends a rather, caveat-filled review of Star Trek III, The Search for Spock. But we ain't done yet, folks. Oh no, we got 3 more of these. And it starts to get really weird as they go along. Because next up, we've got Star Trek IV, The Voyage Home.
I'm looking forward to it, brother. Another interesting one. Another one that kind of breaks certain rules, gets some things right, some things not as much. So yeah, that should be another fun one.
Yeah, I'm only moderately looking forward to it, but I'm looking forward to it. So we will definitely see. But my friend, thank you so much. Thank you.
Another good one, my brother.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was trying to say. I don't know why the hell I couldn't speak English.
All right, brother. Same here. Another good one, and I'm very much looking forward to the next one. So with that, I will see you next week.
Thanks for listening to the Reviews Without Remorse podcast with Joe and Dave. Join us here every Thursday for a new episode, and be sure to check out the Reviews Without Remorse channel on YouTube for spoiler-free reviews of new releases. If you enjoyed this podcast, please consider becoming a Patreon. You can find our page on patreon.com/reviewswithoutremorse, one word. As little as $1 a month goes a long way. All clips in this podcast are for commentary and critique and is considered fair use. No copyright infringement is intended.
Stick around, Scotty. I might need to lay down a captain's log.
Gross, sir. It's a class 4 piss hydra from hell!
I should probably get that looked at.
You have stage 3 space herpes, Jim. Have you been having sex with the aliens we've discovered?
There wasn't much sleeping going on. Wait, you said having sex. Too bad. That would have been funny.
Damn it, Jim. What about the Prime Directive?
Did I forget to tell you about the Prime Directive, big guy? Oh, wow. I'm getting some vibrant colors down there. Oh, that is ripe.
You've been spreading a virulent STD across the entire galaxy.
I have a lot to put right. Then again, we live in the 23rd century. Problem solved.
Damn it, Jim. You gotta notify every alien you slept with in the past 5 years.
Captain's log, Stardate, I'm not talking to Bones anymore. He's a real buzzkill. Relax, it's not like it's space AIDS. Scotty, here are the coordinates of every place my Wang made contact.
My mother's house?
I wouldn't kiss her on the mouth from now on. Or the butt. You want to slide those knobs there, or you want me to keep going? So the chances are slim, but I'd get tested just to be safe.
I'm just a slave. The fact that you took the time to tell me really touches my heart.
Just like you touched mine.
Hey, I heard that. Chuck, this one's got a bug. Throw her in the incinerator.
So, remember that game I taught you? The naked game?
You never told me who won.
We both lost. Hello, the Gorn. I know we promised never to talk about our epic battle, and our hands, clenched in anger, found themselves intertwined in passion, but I might have given you herpes.
No
Oh, really? Yeah.
Damn it, Jim. Keep it in your pants.
Bones, you're a doctor, not my mom. Everyone's been notified, so no harm, no foul.
Scotty's parents are getting a divorce.
Yes, it's all tied up in a nice little bow, except for one thing. Who gave the herpes to me?
Hey, man. We gotta talk.